Hello, friends. Chris Corsi here, president of Thrive Today, and I want to welcome you to the Relational Skills in Real Life podcast. I'm glad you're here. Today's topic is how do I know if something is spiritual versus something is because of unprocessed pain? That's right. How do I know if I'm running into some demonic interference when I'm working with people, or is it unprocessed pain? Friends, this could be a book. But you know what? I'm going to try to simplify it today and just give you some of the overviews and some of the takeaways on this topic. Because ultimately, how can we tell if something's unprocessed pain that's being exposed or if it's demonic and spiritual in some way and requires spiritual solutions? Well, friends, I've worked with people for for going on 30 years, and you know what? Working with people with severe trauma gives you lots of opportunities to try to practice some of these things. And the question often comes up when I train people and I train teams, which is how do I know when it's time to use relational skills to equip people or if this is like a spiritual warfare thing? How do we know if it's human pain or spiritual warfare? Well, both topics can be rather complex. And I think of Matthew 16, where Jesus rebuked Satan while interacting with Peter, while Jesus was saying what was going to happen that's leading up to the cross. So the enemy can show up in subtle ways as well as not so subtle ways. So, as a rule of thumb, first and foremost, we always talk to God. We always talk to God about these things because He knows what's going on and He has the resources and the solution for us. So we want to get really good at listening to God, paying attention to God's presence, and helping people and equip people to be able to see some of what God sees. So anytime you are stuck or you're uncertain about what's going on, interact with Jesus for clarity and discernment. And learning to be in tune with God's presence is a foundational skill that everyone in pastoral care, prayer ministry, counseling, therapy would benefit from, helping people interact with the living God. And over time, you want to learn to trust your discernment. So in pastoral care, woundedness is often more common than demonic activity, but this doesn't mean that demonic activity isn't there or that it isn't a contributing factor to what's keeping people stuck. I've learned to be slow to attribute a problem to a demon hiding under a rock. I know lots of people out there just are looking for a demon under every rock, and they're convinced every problem is because of a demon. Well, there tends to be a little more balance to that, but there's good and great wisdom in testing the spirits to make sure what's happening in this moment. So whenever you're confused, after you talk to God, you also test the spirits as 1 John 4 reads. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God, and every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. So, as a rule of thumb, we take authority over any powers or principalities if there's a demonic issue going on as we're praying with people. And if you're not sure, let's just test the spirits here because ultimately strong emotions tend to be tied to triggered pain. So is the person in relational mode or enemy mode? In enemy mode, it's hard to know what's going on. So we want to get the person back into relational mode and then search for God's peace. And spiritual resistance prefers enemy mode, where people are vulnerable to getting taken advantage of with spiritual oppression. So, as a rule of thumb, the enemy likes enemy mode, and he likes to keep us stuck in enemy mode, where fear is very loud and pain is also very loud. And if someone is in pain and they have strong reactions, I pray for them to have God's peace. And I ask God to bind any spiritual forces that are influencing the person. So if you're not sure about the source, you can still use your authority in Christ and ask God to bind the enemy and to expose the enemy. And just as a general rule of thumb here, there's no harm in praying and taking authority over demonic that might be showing up in a situation. You can ask God to bind the evil one. And keep in mind that if demons are there, they have to have permission in some way to be there and harass someone. So sometimes the ground is sin. Some of there's sinful patterns in a person's life, or that's a vow that they've made that's keeping them stuck, or agreements that they've made. So there's lots of reasons why the demonic can be there, but we can say, Jesus, would you show us what ground the demon has to be there. I personally don't interact with demons and no desire to interact with them when I'm praying with people. Just ask God to bind them. But Jesus and his spirit are fully capable of showing us what right the enemy has and then addressing it from there. Keep in mind, as just the character of spirits, is they persistently hate the light, anything related to God, Jesus, or the Bible. So if there's a reaction when you talk about Jesus or pray or read the Bible, then this is a suspicious, this suspiciously looks like demonic activity. And I also will just look as a side note, what's the tense, the voice that people are hearing? Our thoughts are like, I feel this, I feel sad, I feel mad. Demonic often would say, you are bad, you're a failure. So just look at the thoughts that are coming in. The enemy uses pain to hijack a person's mind, and the enemy exploits wounds that already exist. So oftentimes when people struggle with shame, then accusation is what keeps them stuck. Or when they wrestle with fear, then they're going to probably be trying to use control. Or if they fear rejection, as rejection wounds, they often have a lot of bitterness. Or if there's trauma there, there's often some distrust. So I can remember a friend of mine, I was going to visit a friend of mine in another country, and she wanted me to just pray with a client of hers and help her out with the client. And she had said, every time I pray with this client, nothing works. A demon comes out and it manifests and it mocks me and laughs at me. And my prayers don't work. The demon just keeps going no matter what I pray. And she said, Chris, I would love your help on this because I don't know what to do. Well, I had a suspicion that this wasn't a demon. So when I got there, sure enough, sat in her office, prayed and took authority over any demonic in the session. And guess what? This demon kept talking and mocking and laughing. And so basically I said to the woman, you don't have to do this anymore. And then I said it again. You don't have to do this anymore. And the woman started crying. And so there was a part of her mind, a personality who felt like she had to be a demon to harass and to cause pain and problems. So the counselor wasn't doing anything wrong. It's just they were trying to bind a personality, and that doesn't work when you're working with people. So it wasn't a demonic interference in that particular case. It was just a part of her mind who, felt like she had to be a demon for various reasons. So trust your prayers. The enemy will always want you to discount your prayers. And so the enemy will use pain to trap people and to keep them stuck, as well as fear. The enemy is an opportunist who will try to hide and he'll try to do anything he can to keep them stuck and far away from Christ. Ephesians 4:27 says, don't give the devil a foothold. Give no opportunity for the devil. So again, we're asking the Lord to shine a light on why is this demon here? What right, what permission does it have? A plane needs a landing strip to land. So what right, what ground does the enemy have? And you want to notice what brings freedom while you're working with people. What's working, what doesn't seem to be working. Because Jesus held both realities together. He cast out demons, but he healed people's bodies. He restored relationships. He forgave sins. He comforted the grieving. He treated people holistically, spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. So there's some helpful discernment questions that we can ask. So when observing a situation, ask, is this person protecting themselves or attacking life? Because pain tends to protect, demonic influence tends to destroy. So is this person protecting themselves or is this reaction just attacking life? And the Gospel of John 10:10 tells us the enemy's pattern which the thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. So if the pattern is relational protection, think about wounds. If the pattern is persistent destruction, consider spiritual oppression. So is this relational protection or is this persistent destruction? I also use a helpful lens that might be helpful for you as you think about this. The difference between is it pain or is it demonic influence? Pain is triggered reactions. There's a story of wounds, and it softens with safety and feeling safe. And pain, can flood people with emotions. Demonic influence you'll see extreme manifestations and reactions. There's a hatred of truth, a hatred of light, and resists all help. That's what the demonic, they will resist all help, and they're just persistent destruction. So we can ask some practical discernment questions here, friends. Right? What helps when the person feels understood? What happens when the person feels understood? Pain should soften when people feel seen. If empathy reduces intensity, then it's likely a pain-based reaction. Does the problem make sense when you know their story? So pain almost always has a story behind it. If the behavior makes sense, once you know the story, it's usually unprocessed pain. And does prayer bring peace or agitation? When someone is dealing with pain, prayer usually brings relief. They may cry or they may release emotions. And they often feel seen by God. But when something is spiritually oppressive, prayer can sometimes produce sudden agitation, a hostility towards prayer, unusual resistance to the name of Jesus, and disruption or confusion. So, friends, above all, practicing relational skills grows capacity. Every human brain can use more capacity. So, the more capacity and maturity that we have, the harder it is for the enemy to manipulate and harass us. He likes it when God's children are immature and ill equipped. He really likes that because we're vulnerable. So, friends, as we do, we have to do a little application step here. I just want to encourage you to spend some time getting relational, feeling some appreciation, thinking about times where you felt God's closeness, and ask God if there's something that you are carrying today that He wants to carry. Say, Lord, what do you want me to give you today? Am I carrying something that you would like to carry? Um, what would you like me to know about that? And just be open to what God may bring to mind. If there's something He wants you to trust Him on, to give Him, you'll feel a lot better, right? Giving Him those weights. Or sometimes He wants to give you something to have more peace. Now, friends, I just want to encourage you. Our partner ministry, Deeper Walk, has great resources on spiritual warfare. You can visit deeperwalk.com. Marcus Warner has a great book called Breakthrough, where he addresses the 5 essential strategies for healing. That includes spiritual warfare as well as other things. A lot of good stuff there. And you can visit thrivetoday.org to learn more about building capacity with relational skills. Friends, we all can use a lot more capacity these days, can't we? Well, it's my hope and my prayer that this is the start of something good for you today.